The Earnestly Speaking podcast is a show that is founded on free-flowing conversation and may at times venture into mature subjects. Listener discretion is advised.
Yeah, Earnestly Speaking podcast. Let's get it. I'm a giant in New York, in Miami carry heat. So much more in store, my product can flood the street. Opinion Nation Godfather, CEO. Puff in the late 90s, gon' see me blow. Oh. Got my hustle on, no imitation of that. Army of untouchables, Opinion Nation staff. Never an off season, homie, check the numbers. Heart throb in my own right, supplying southern comfort. Earnestly speaking, my ego is well fed. Earnestly speaking, you're too feeble and no threat. See, I'm like a hurricane, you're a mild breeze. Earnestly speaking, leaving Eli a dynasty. Shake!
All right, Earnestly Podcast coming to you March 13th, Thursday, March 13th, 2025. It is an all NBA episode here. It's been a rough day so far with this technology today. I had a scheduled episode to do live here, and I actually did start it 5 minutes in, and then everything went haywire to Wi-Fi, so we had to delay that episode, do that one later on with Kyle Nash. But we do have things running here. I'm enjoying the course here by our NBA frequent flyer here. We got Greg Hrinya, NBA author and analyst here on our podcast here weekly from now until forever, until the end of the season at least, So, Greg, how you doing, buddy? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
And by the way, you guys won't know this though, but I couldn't hear the music in the background. Couldn't hear.
I heard it.
I couldn't hear it. So I had to play which is really stupid because like there was a delay actually, a couple second delay between where we're talking now and then the listeners. By the way, we are live here on Facebook. We are live here on YouTube. Earnestly Speaking Pod on YouTube. I'll check out the podcast, of course, on YouTube as well too. And of course on Twitter, my Twitter at EJ Christian 7 on X/Twitter. Yeah, it's X. I know, I get it. Yeah, whatever. So yeah, it's been a rough morning, but we are here. We're recording. We're going to talk a little bit NBA. We'll do another live podcast in a couple hours, hopefully about Kyle Nash. We'll talk about NBA, NFL free agency, and all that good stuff. First things first, Greg. Last night we saw what I would say at this point, based on what I saw last night in that game, the likely NBA Finals preview between the Celtics and the Thunder last night at the Garden. Thunder win that game by I think it was 8 or 9. Great game. I saw the highlights this morning. I had to record last night, so I couldn't really watch it in real time. But saw the highlights this morning. What a game! To me, that game said more about the Thunder. Now, look, I know the Celtics still missing Porzingis, obviously, but you got to bake that in. He's always missing games no matter what. Jrue Holiday did play the game last night. Tatum was there, even though he was questionable coming to the game. Jaylen Brown. But to me, watching the Thunder when the game went down the road, I know, look, they've went through a gauntlet now of some games here. They went back-to-back against the Nuggets over the weekend, Sunday, Monday. 2 days later, playing the Celtics, the defending NBA champions. So basically playing the last two NBA champions in the last 5 days. And to me, when I see these games, and these are the games I'm looking to see what the Knicks, like when I criticize the Knicks, it's because, and I say, well, I need quality wins. I'm getting it from OKC. And it's why I'm buying into the idea of OKC winning a title this year because, or at the very least, going to the finals, their track is a little bit tougher because of the Western Conference. But the more I watch these kids play, and now they're healthy too, and they're healthy, Chet's back in the lineup, and all this good stuff, I'm just now, even though we have the fear of there's a youth movement there and a young and this and that, I'm watching these guys like, you know what? They may be young, man, but they are locked in, and I think all the disrespect they've been getting across the league this year, despite having one of not the best record in basketball, is, I think, it's motivating here. So I'm after last night, I think I'm bought into the Thunder, not only just going to the finals, possibly win the whole damn thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think prior to last night, they were definitely, the second favorite, I would say, to Boston. And you missed too that Jalen Williams wasn't playing for Oklahoma City. So,
there you go.
So you could say their second best player wasn't playing, and I wouldn't say that Porzingis is the Celtics' second best player. So I mean, I think that game said more about OKC than it did about Boston. Although I think it said some things about Boston that would concern me a little bit. But
such as
the 3-point shooting. I mean, I and not just the missing of the 3-point shots, just like their insistence to shoot them, like to go down with the ship. And
22 attempts in the first quarter, second most in NBA history.
Yeah, I mean, my issue was they start out, they were like 3 for 19 or 4 for 23, I want to say, in the third quarter. And it's when they abandoned shooting threes that they got back in the game. So, I mean, like they started going to the rim. Jaylen Brown couldn't make a shot, so we started attacking the rim. Tatum got to the rim. So they were down by 11. The game got tied like relatively quickly. And then again, it's just bombs away from three. And it's like, I feel like they have so much talent. They should be the best team in the league, like even with Oklahoma City, with Cleveland, with any team you want in the West. But I feel like they just submit to the variance of the 3-point shot, where it's like, to me, I don't know that it's laziness. I know it's a math equation for them, but it's like they're going to lose playoff games just because on a given night they're not shooting the three well, where it's like that doesn't have to be the case. Like Jason Tatum is a shooting guard in a 6'9" body. He can get to the rim at will. He's a good finisher. He's a good mid-range shooter. And he'll take 12, 13 threes a game. Jaylen Brown, same kind of thing. Like, he's not a great outside shooter. He can get to the rim at will, but he'll take a bunch of threes a game. It's like they are just going to force threes no matter how it's going. And I feel like against a good team like Oklahoma City, or even a good team like Cleveland, you're basically saying if we have an off-night shooting, we're going to lose this game. Whereas to me, that doesn't have to be the case. So, I mean, that would be my complaint with them. Shooting 63s a game when you've got as much talent as they do, to me, I'm not really a fan of. And I feel like that brings other teams into the mix that maybe shouldn't be in the mix. Like maybe they get upset by Cleveland because they're so reliant on the three and they have a bad week shooting the three. Like, you can be great for most of the season and then just be in a lull. It's like the MLB playoffs, like everything's boiled down to a good or bad week at the plate. So it's the same thing with them, a good or bad week shooting the three. Whereas I know that like with Cleveland, like they're going to get Mobley down low, they're going to get Allen down low, they're going to have, they'll play a 2-man game with both of them. They're going to shoot threes, but they're also going to get stuff around the rim. Like, I don't know. I didn't love watching that game from Boston's perspective, because I'm like, they could be doing other things other than just jacking up a lot of threes. But I don't want to take anything away from Oklahoma City because I thought they were great. They can play any way you need them to play. I mean, they can play double bigs. If a team is playing fast, they can play with one of them at the 5, be it Chet or be it Hartenstein. So, I mean, like, they can do anything they need to do to match up with any other team. And I think right now you can make the argument they're the best team in the league, not just in the West, but in the entire league.
Are you still concerned about their shooting or lack of shooting maybe that they have? That you mentioned a couple times in the podcast that the one concern you have with OKC is that they can use more shooting. Is that still a concern now? Or
Sure, yeah. I mean, which
is funny because we're criticizing Boston of being shooting too much, but yet OKC.
but I will say with Oklahoma City, they're not forcing all those shots. Like, they might not be as good at shooting them, but they're not going to take 60 of them. So I mean, like, they're not going to say like, oh, we're shooting 29% from three today, we're going to jack up 60 of them and hope that a couple of them go in. So like, they will go and do other things. We'll get to the mid-range. Jalen Williams will get to the mid-range. I feel like they're not so reliant on the three like Boston is. Like Boston, like that is baked into their entire scheme. It's like, we're going to shoot a lot of threes. But if we're talking in 2 months about why Oklahoma City flamed out in the second round of the playoffs, yeah, I think that it's going to be their outside shooting. But they do have a tremendous amount of talent outside of just the main guys. I mean, the guy that's probably going to be like the X factor going to the playoffs is going to be Aaron Wiggins. I mean, they're going to need him to make threes. Like Isaiah Joe, yes, but I feel like Aaron Wiggins is a guy no one's going to talk about. He's had a couple 25, 30-point games this year, and like they're going to need his shooting come playoff time.
Another reason why I feel good about the Thunder, especially getting to the finals and possibly winning it, is that, for all we'll talk about the Western Conference being this juggernaut, and every year we say that there's like 7, 8 teams that could, if you play the cards right, they can find themselves in the conference finals, maybe win the NBA finals. I don't feel that way this year, even though there's some really good stories going on. Golden State's been surging with Jimmy Butler in the lineup now. They're like, I think like 11-1 since that trade when he plays. Our obviously the Lakers, we'll get to them in a second, and what they're doing, with Luka and whatnot, all these great stories. But at the end of the day, and I said this like about a month and a half ago, that, and I haven't really pivoted on this, to be honest with you. Like, I thought there were maybe only 3 teams in the West that maybe, can get to the finals. I consider real finals contenders, and honestly, Dallas was one of those teams, and they're done now because of obviously the injury to Kyrie, and now AD's probably gonna be hung up for the rest of the year. On top of that, I don't even think they're in the plane right now currently as we speak. So, and then at the end of the day, like, I still think the teams that are really, to me, true finals contenders, really, Denver is one. Obviously we go with Thunder. Denver's one. I guess you have to put Lakers there now with what they're doing. But here's the thing. I think OKC's better than both those teams, significantly better than both those teams. I think Denver, as good as Jokic is, and we get to the MVP race in a second, as good as Jokic is and has been this year, and he's phenomenal, I think OKC's team is just leaps and bounds better than everybody else in that Western Conference. And after what I've seen this week, obviously take away the Denver they lost to Denver on Monday, but what I saw on Sunday and what I saw last night against Boston, yeah, I think OKC struck the finals is a lot easier than people give credit for. I don't think the West is as good as you think, even though you have really good teams there.
No, I don't think so either. I think that everybody looks at the depth of the Western Conference. Like, yes, they have depth, but I don't know that they have championship level depth. I mean, if you look at it and say, oh, like Sacramento is a solid team and they're in 9th, whereas like you look at the Eastern Conference, like all these teams are 9, 10, 11, 12, and they're tanking and 15, 20 games under 500. So people look at the Western Conference and say, oh, it's so much better. And it's like, yeah, but I mean, 2 of the 3 best teams are in the East. They don't have like the depth of the West, but I mean, like, the team that probably would give, like, the dark horse that I would say for the West right now would be Minnesota. And that it might seem wild, but the reason why I would say that is only because I feel like they can match up to whatever style a team wants to play. Like, they have, obviously Ant is their superstar player. You could have Naz Reid as your 5 outside shooting threes. You could have Rudy Gobert inside, being like defending Jokic or whomever. I just feel like they will match up well in a slowdown playoff series. I mean, look, I'm still picking OKC out of all these teams to get there. I'm just saying that, like, when I look at Memphis, I don't see them as a real threat. I think Denver has flaws. I think outside Jokic, if Aaron Gordon's not going to be healthy, like, they're in a situation where they have no depth on their roster to the point where if they have one guy hurt, like, they're in big time trouble. And I've always thought that, like, the depth wouldn't hurt them as much because you're only going to be playing 8 guys maybe in the playoffs, but like, we don't know that they're going to have those 8 guys. I mean, Julian Strawther hasn't been playing. Aaron Gordon's been banged up. So, I mean, now you're reducing their rotation to basically like 5 quality players, including Westbrook. So I think depth is going to be an issue there going through it. Memphis, I don't trust. The Lakers, I think size is going to be a big thing for them. Like, they're going to need Rui Hachimura playing a lot of 5. They're going to play small and have like 6'8", 6'9" Rui Hachimura playing 5. And I don't know that I trust Jackson Hayes all that much in a playoff series. They're going to be relying on Dorian Finney-Smith to guard centers. Like, with Luka's fitness level or injuries or both, now LeBron being hurt, their lack of size, I guess you put them in there just because of how they looked when LeBron was healthy.
Yeah.
But I mean, I feel like over a month and a half, 2 months of playoffs, I just don't know that they're going to be able to get through with their lack of size and relying so much on.
And I know a lot of Laker fans are like, sorry to cut you off real quick. I know a lot of Laker fans are like very much, oh, we could beat this team. Look, you can beat a team on a random Tuesday or Thursday or Sunday. That we see all the time with bad teams doing that. But we're talking about a 7-game series now. I just don't see, as good as Lakers have been right now, I don't see the Lakers being able to beat that team, those horses, 4 out of 7 games. That's when you can adjust, and what can the Lakers could do that the OKC Thunder can't at the very least counter or at the very least limit? As great as LeBron is, he's still 40 years old. He can't go back into the time machine and go back to 2012. You know what I mean? He's look, still phenomenal. Probably still top 10 player in the league right now. But there's a limit to that. There's a ceiling. Well, Luka, same thing also too. As they get past those 2 guys, what's next? LKC's roster is so deep. They have shooters if need be. Obviously, not to the extreme of Boston, obviously, but it's some shooters. We saw last night. When they need to make shots, they can do so. You have all those other things. I just think OKC, especially what you've seen last week or so too, also, some of the concerns I have is mostly internal about their youth. I think these last 5 days, they have really separated themselves from everybody else in the Western Conference, even Denver.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they have a counter to anything that another team can throw at them. So, I mean, like, if you're looking at the Lakers, like, okay, they're going to play Hachimura at the 5. Right. Well, then they'll take Hartenstein off the floor and play Chet at the 5.
Yeah.
And he's probably more athletic than Hachimura. So, I mean, he's bigger and more athletic. So, I mean, like, I just feel like they have an answer to everything that the Lakers might throw out there. And, if they want to play big with Jackson Hayes, or let's just hypothetically say they had kept Mark Williams, okay, then you play Hartenstein. And you either play Chet at the 4 or you play small and you take Chet off the floor. So, I mean, like, they have, to your point, the great depth that allows them to play in a number of different ways. And like, they can throw a number of different bodies on Luka, which I think would make life difficult for him. I mean, like, he really hasn't played that well in a Lakers uniform. And I mean, you can say that's because of fitness, because of injury, whatever you want to say it is. I mean, the numbers are what they are. Not even looking at it from a team perspective, but like just him, I mean, shooting 32% from 3, 39.9% from the field overall. So, I mean, like, those are pretty pedestrian numbers for a guy who's supposed to be a top 5 player in the league. And I don't know that, like, he's going to get fresher as the season goes on.
Yeah, exactly. Another day at the office at SGA last night, 34 points, 5 boards, 7 assists. 38 minutes, of course. I know the year Jokic is having, and I know I said in the podcast that if the standings, for some reason, the standings come to place where Denver is probably within a few games of the number 1 seed, Oklahoma City Thunder, that we might have to consider, Jokic is the MVP frontrunner. I don't know if I don't know if I can do it as great as he's been this year. The Thunder are still I think 8 up, maybe 9 up now on the Nuggets right now, something like that.
So the Thunder are 54-12, the Nuggets are 42-24. So, I mean, the Thunder or the Nuggets, I guess you could say, have double the losses. So
yeah, so it's 12 back now, right? I'm not mistaken, right? No. There you go.
12 back in the loss. So, I mean, Oklahoma City is 12 clear of both Memphis and Denver, who are tied for second.
I think it's clear that Jokic is the best player in the NBA. I don't think he wants to argue with that. But what is also clear is that I think SGA, it's a wrap. Barring OKC's does a fade to last month, which I don't see happening. I think SGA is the MVP because SGA has actually. I forgot this like a month ago. They did the surge without Chet. Chet wasn't even in the lineup from the majority of this surge, and Denver has been relatively healthy this year. Jamal Murray's been there relatively most of the year. Michael Porter Jr.'s been there. Aaron Gordon's got hurt recently, but he's had the core there. So it's not like to say that these guys are out of lineup to weigh the argument. And it's not a knock on Jokic. I think he's the best player in the league. It's not even close. But I think when you look at MVP, I think at the same time, wins and losses have to matter. And when you're 12 up right now in March against everybody else in the Western Conference, you have to give that some credence. And I think, I don't know where you stand on this one, but I'm still SGA, and I probably put a little more space now between SGA and Jokic now in the MVP race. Who you got in the MVP right now?
Yeah, I think 2 things can be true. 1, Jokic is the best player in the league, and 2, Shea should and will win MVP. Like, LeBron didn't win MVP for 12 straight years when he was the best player in the league, when he was with Cleveland and Miami and all that. So, I mean, I don't think that you just automatically give it to the best player in the league. I think that the year that Shea has is beyond worthy of an MVP nod, and I'd be shocked if the voters didn't give him that based on the fact that, I mean, they've got half the losses that Denver does. I mean, you go through a season, you win, let's say they wind up winning 67 games, and they win the conference by 10 games, let's say. Like, how do you not reward him for being one of the top scorers in the league, for being one of the top distributors in the league, for playing strong defense? I mean, it's not like he's a traffic cone out there. So, I mean, like, he does everything on the floor you need him to do. They're arguably the best team in the league. And I feel like historically, be it Derrick Rose, be it James Harden, like, guys have won MVP awards because they've gotten their team to a place that people didn't think they were going to go, instead of just handing the award to the league's quote unquote best player.
Right.
So the numbers that Jokic is putting up are phenomenal, but I mean, at the end of the day, like, they haven't contributed to winning the way that Shea's numbers have
In
contributed.
comparison, right.
In comparison, just between those two. So I agree that it's a 2-horse race, but I, at this point, would say that like Shea is like, I don't know what the Vegas odds are, but I mean, he's probably like, I don't know, minus 550 or minus 700 to win
I'll tell you right now. Hold on.
MVP, and Jokic is probably like plus 300.
I'll tell you right now. Actually, look it up.
I have not looked that up, so I'm just guessing.
It's okay. I'm gonna tell you right in a second. Actually, awards. So right now, MVP right now, Shea is actually a big favorite now. Shea is minus 550.
That's what I said. 550.
And Jokic is plus 375.
Wow.
LeBron before the injury was third actually last week.
Okay.
I don't know if you knew that. He was plus 220,000 though.
Yeah, I didn't know that, but I feel like it's been a 2-horse race for so long, and that I wouldn't really they could put whoever they wanted in third, fourth, and fifth. And had LeBron played the last month and a half of the season fully healthy, I mean, you could make the argument for him being third in the race.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, what he's done this year, I mean, it's why I say he's still top 10 player in the league. Yeah. Right now, you can make the argument now. Speaking of LeBron, he's out a week to 2 weeks. That'll be hearing so far. Can they Lakers survive without him? They really lost the game to Brooklyn on Monday without him. Lost to Boston when he got hurt in that game on Saturday. So I think they're right now currently on a small 2-game losing streak right now. Currently, if I'm not mistaken. Look at the Western Conference. Obviously, they are currently a half game behind the 2 seed, which is both shared by Memphis and Denver. They are only a half game ahead of Houston for the current 4 seed. And Golden State is surging now, only 4 back of the 4 seed with a 5-game winning streak. Can the Lakers survive this situation? Because look, if LeBron's out for an extended period of time, Minnesota's on a roll, 6 in a row. Golden State on a roll, 5 in a row. Houston on a roll, 4 in a row until last night. Lost to the Knicks, right?
Portland lost to the Knicks last night.
I'm sorry, it's Portland lost to the Knicks, not Houston. Yes. Sorry.
So the Knicks beat Sacramento and Portland. Those are the last.
Right. I apologize for that. So you have 3 teams behind in the West that are surging right now currently at the worst time. It is not implausible to see that if the Lakers do continue to struggle in the next 2-3 weeks and LeBron's not in the lineup, that they can fall back into playing very quickly. Just saying.
Yeah, you're not wrong about that. I mean, like if you look at the standings, I mean, Minnesota's won 6 straight games. Golden State's 9-1 in their last 10. I feel like the ideal landing spot for the Lakers would probably be 4th or 5th, so they could play the Rockets. I mean, they're probably the team that I believe in the least out of all the Western Conference teams, even going into the play-in. I mean, not counting Dallas because they're all banged up. Maybe not Sacramento, but like if I were the Lakers, I'd probably rather play Houston than the Clippers or Minnesota or Golden State. But I mean, can they stay in 4 or 5? Probably not. To be perfectly honest with you, I mean, can they edge Golden State having a 5-game lead in the loss column? It depends on how much time LeBron misses. If he just misses another week to 10 days, they could survive it. If he's not ready to come back until April 5th, let's say, then they could find themselves in the play-in quite easily, because I don't know that Luka's in shape enough to carry an offense entirely by himself. And if you're talking about Austin Reeves and Doncic as your backcourt, that's not really a good defensive backcourt. And then if you don't have LeBron facilitating, and also he was playing at a great level defensively, probably one of the best that he's played in years. So I mean, you lose his defense, you lose his offense, his playmaking. Could I see them falling back? Yeah, probably, because if you're just going based on percentage points, the Lakers have the 3rd hardest schedule left in the league.
Yeah, so there's right now for the folks on watching on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook, live, of course, on demand later on. There's the standings right now. Look at 4 through 8, right now, 4 through 7, really. Lakers right now, of course, currently the 4th seed, but only half a game ahead of Houston. Golden State, who has now won 5 in a row, is 4 back. But again, if LeBron stays out and they continue to struggle and Golden State continue surging, that could be an issue. Minnesota won 6 in a row. They're the 7th seed. They can make things interesting too. They're only also 4 games back. So things can get a little weird. You know what I mean? And remember, 7 through 10 is a play-in situation. So there you go.
I mean, again, look at Minnesota, and I brought them up before, but they're. So I go to Tankathon a lot to see remaining strength of schedule. So the Lakers have the 3rd toughest schedule remaining, winning percentage of 547 against the teams that they're facing. Right. Only Phoenix and Sacramento have a harder schedule. Minnesota, conversely, 429, that's 28th in the league. So, I mean, Minnesota's got the third easiest schedule just based on winning percentage. I mean, look, you could have games against Dallas. You could have games against teams that are tanking, or like resting guys. So, maybe some of those numbers, it's funny math a little bit because you don't know who's going to be playing on a given night. But I mean, just based on the records of the teams that they're playing, Minnesota's got a pretty soft schedule the rest of the way. So, I mean, if the Lakers don't get LeBron back until April and they have to go another 3 weeks without him, like there's a possibility with the third hardest schedule remaining in the league, like the losses start piling up a little bit. And then, Golden State remains hot, and Golden State's schedule isn't like super easy down the stretch. So not as easy as Minnesota, but I mean, like there are teams that are going to be playing well behind the Lakers if they lose 8 out of 10, let's say, or something like that.
Right. One more thing before we get to our worst contracts draft, which we're going to be doing in a second. Have you been following the Stephen A. Smith, LeBron James little kerfuffle last week?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on it?
I mean, I'm not overly interested in it because, like, I was having this conversation with someone yesterday where it's like, this isn't like, I get that like Stephen A's problem is not with Bronny, it's with LeBron being like this NBA deity who's like, just forcing his son into the league or whatever and forcing him upon everyone. But like, this isn't Michael Jordan playing baseball. Like, Bronny is averaging 20 points in the G League. I mean, it's not like he's like, I mean, look, he's not an NBA player right now, but he's also not like a completely horrible player to the point where, you're taking an accountant and putting him on the NBA floor because his last name is James. And if his last name was Smith, he'd, be working somewhere, in another profession. I mean, he's still a guy who, like, in 5 years, could he develop into like the 7th or 8th guy, like in a rotation? Like, could he be a rotation player? Like, I'm not going to rule that out based on him having like a shortened college season, coming off cardiac arrest and then going straight to the NBA. Like, I don't know that he's not going to develop into like a meaningful role player. So, I mean, like, again, it's not like Michael Jordan batting like 050 or whatever, I mean, it's like he does have game. It's just not NBA game right now, but like, I'm not going to throw away a 19-year-old's career. Just the same thing like when we're scouting and watching players for the NBA draft and you're watching college games, people be watching March Madness. It's like, you're not going to throw away like what a guy does in one random game in March when he's 18 years old. Like, there was a lot of like drama around Jeremiah Fears middle of the year. Like, the kid's like, he's got a baby face and he's 18 years old and reclassified to get into this draft. Like, you're not going to throw away what he's going to do for the next 15 years of his career because of one game against a Big 12 team in January. And like, it's the same thing with Bronny. Like, he's still young. He, had kind of a chaotic college season. And like, yeah, he wouldn't be in the league if his name was Smith, but like, that's only right now. That's not to say in 5 years he couldn't be really good.
But this is why I am actually team Stephen A on this whole situation. There's nothing he said about Bronny that's inflammatory whatsoever. In fact, you can argue, and I don't think it's an argument, honestly, that LeBron James is the reason why the criticism are ratcheted up. LeBron James is the one who tweeted last year before he got drafted that my son is better than half the NBA. So, and Stephen A, to his credit, has said his issue wasn't Bronny. It's LeBron putting his kid in position for this stuff. So now LeBron getting big mad about, oh, my kid and my son. No. First off, if you pay attention, he was talking about you and about how you're handling this and how the optics are you putting him in a position now to fail. Because you're the one that said and tweeted that my kid could be half the NBA right now, better than half the league right now. Okay, you're the one that said that. That wasn't Stephen A. Smith that said that or anybody else. You said that with your own computer, or your own phone, whatever we call it. So to sit there and now get mad about it, something you said that you said in the first place, that's on you. You'll be mad all you want. I mean, this is why. Look, LeBron James to me, and I was talking about this with my wife this morning because she's off the LeBron thing now, but obviously she's a little more extreme because she's like me, a Heat fan. She's pissed. In fact, she left in 2014. She's still not over that yet. But my problem with LeBron James is that he never holds himself ever accountable for anything. Okay, he expects people to just, okay, I'm going to say the thing, and then if things are critical, don't get any blowback. No, that's not how it works. You don't get to tell me how to feel about a situation. I said before he got drafted that Bronny was not NBA ready. in my opinion. Okay, look, I'm not an expert, but I watched the games. And what I saw was, as a kid who was a good basketball player, not quite NBA ready yet. Okay, that is not controversial because everybody agrees with that across the board. Okay, you're the one that decided to put this kid in a position to fail because you're the one that came with all the bravado about, oh, this kid's NBA ready and he's better half the league and this and stuff. And now you're getting mad about that because you want to set up this way, and then we see it's like, no, like, stop. Like, you know damn well if it wasn't for you being who you are and your stature, this kid wouldn't even be sniffing the league right now. So stop. Okay, no one's entitled to that. Okay, and you don't get to dictate. You don't get to dictate how we feel about it. Okay, it's our opinions and deal with it. Okay, I'm so with LeBron, and I'm good about like separating the two. About yes, I may have issues with him, some things he says and operates and stuff, but at the end of the day, does it affect who I look at him as a basketball player? No. I think he's still number 2 behind Jordan all time, and he's still top 10 player in the league now. And look, I keep it the main thing. But LeBron is becoming very frustrating now for me because this is the guy I've for years have defended and this and that. And I'm like, I told my wife this morning at breakfast, I'm like, I think I'm out. I think I'm out now. I think I'm done defending this dude because he makes it hard. He says some wacky shit and then gets mad when his blowback. Like, no, he's in the wrong here. Like, Stephen A was correct. Stephen A has not said one thing inflammatory about Bronny or even LeBron at this point. Everything's been above board. So LeBron can honestly shove it. Honestly, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, my view has changed a little bit over the year. I was much harsher on him in the beginning of the year because Bronny looked inept from a basketball standpoint.
Thank you. And basketball.
Yes, but he's been a lot better lately. So, I mean, like, I feel like he deserves a chance to develop. Like, does he not get the same chance to – I mean, again, I pulled up his stats. He's averaging 20.6, 4.9 rebounds, 5.2 assists per game in 9 games with the South Bay Lakers. I mean – that doesn't make him a great NBA player, but it's not like, again, Michael Jordan batting for the White Sox AA team and striking out every time, So, I mean, it's like he's at least worthy of a G League spot. And the commentary on LeBron, like, look, people in power do this all the time, be it in politics, be it in sports. I mean, Stephen A says outlandish things that are wrong a lot because especially in football. So, I mean, like, and he doesn't come out and apologize for it. I mean, Shaq the other day was on, I don't know if it was his podcast or TNT, but he was talking about the Pistons and how
I put it in my podcast group on Facebook.
Yeah, I mean, how they're 4 games under 500. It's like he probably hasn't watched the Pistons in years. Yeah. So I mean, like, and he didn't come out and offer some big mea culpa. So I mean, like, people in power who have big statures, it's just not in their nature to come out and say, I was wrong. I should be watching the games more. I really don't know anything. It's just like, oh, I don't care about the Pistons. So whether I was right or wrong doesn't matter. So, I mean, I feel like that's just a thing for people in power and LeBron is an NBA power, whether people like it or not.
But the thing is, though, is that what people are missing here is that Stephen A wasn't critical of Bronny at all.
Yeah.
He's critical of LeBron and how he's been operating on the fringes, on the outside as a result, when he's the one that honestly summed up the field in the first place.
Yeah, no, I get that, but I'm saying that Bronny has proven to be a better player than I would have said he was 2 months ago.
I agree with that.
So I'm willing to give him a little leeway on that to say, and again, I know we have these conversations every day, every week on Twitter. It's like as it happens, but I mean, like, again, I don't know in 5 years that he's not going to, he's 20 years old now, averaging 20 points in the G League. I don't think he'll ever be a great NBA player, but that's not to say that he couldn't be a rotational player somewhere down the line when he gets more into his prime. So, I mean, like, yes, LeBron forced him down our throats, but he's at least proving that he's not the inept basketball player that we thought when the season started, because it looked bad when it started.
Right. And again, I know LeBron's coming as a father, and I get that, but guess what, LeBron? I'm a dad too. I can relate. I have kids also too that play sports. I get it. But at the same time, you don't get to dictate the narrative here either. Okay, because you like the way people are come back on your kid. When in fact, the criticism once again wasn't even about your kid. It's about you.
Yeah,
you're the problem, not Bronny. So get over it, man. Seriously. All right. Anyway, we're gonna do a 5-round. It's gonna be fun. A 5-round draft where Greg and I are going to draft the 5. Well, it'll be 10 because 5 each. The 10 worst contracts in the NBA right now, currently in the in the league. So since Greg, you are the guest, with the first pick in the, earnestly speaking, worst contract draft for 2025. Who are you taking and why?
Thanks for making this easy for me. So I have a couple of people on my list, and I was actually debating between two of them, but I had to go with Embiid at number one, only because he just signed a max extension, and there's a non-zero chance that he never plays basketball again. I mean, like, they're not saying that it's a good chance. I mean, odds are he'll be back next year in some shape or form. He'll rehab over the summer, and I'm sure he'll get some treatment, maybe the same kind of treatment that Kobe got, go to Europe and get some sort of treatment. I have no idea. But I mean, there's at least the possibility that a guy who's on the wrong side of 30, who has no meniscus in his knees, who just re-inked a deal that's going to keep him with the Sixers until his mid-30s. Like, if it turns out that he can't play or is totally diminished, you can't move that contract. There's no amount of picks that you could send out to move that contract in the next couple of years. So given his injury history, the condition of his knees, the fact that it's not like he's in the middle of this contract, like he just started it, like he just re-signed over the summer.
Yeah.
So given that, I would say Embiid right now.
Well, for record,
number one.
If I had a first pick, I would pick Embiid too, also because he leapfrogged the guy who I'm going to pick right now in a second. But yeah, the fact he's owed 50 something, and then 69 on the player opt, which at this rate, the way things are going, we've been discussing on the podcast for the last couple of weeks that he's going to opt in that deal. He's falling apart. It's crazy. It's frustrating because with Embiid is like, when he plays, he's immediately impactful. He doesn't play bad. He hardly has any bad games, honestly. Like the 1 or 2 games he played before he got hurt again, he had a triple-double first game back.
Yeah.
Triple-double, 3-point triple-double.
Yeah, I think this season, though, like the last game he played was against the Nets, and he was 4 of 13, and they actually didn't play in the fourth quarter, and they were down by like 18 points in the third, and it wasn't until they pulled in that Philly came back and tied the game. So, I mean, you could see that he was laboring and not himself, and given Philly's situation, not going anywhere without him, having a top 6 protected pick in a draft, a loaded draft, it made sense to shut him down from a number of standpoints. But I mean, I don't know health-wise what his future is, and I don't think he knows what it is either. I mean, he came out and said, I mean, like, there was a report during one of the games that was news to everybody watching. I believe it was against the Pacers. I could be wrong though, but that he would probably need another knee surgery after the season. And it's like, we don't know that he needs another knee surgery because it's not like repairing a meniscus or repairing an ACL. Like, that's not the issue. So, I mean, like, the fact that they don't know what the treatment is today, and he just started the contract, I think that uncertainty plus the bad contract plus his age, that all adds up for me to a number one pick in this draft.
I also think his play style too also is to help him because he likes to flop around and fall on the floor all the time. Yeah. That's not helpful either.
No. And I think he sold it years ago as like he did that because he thought that like it would prevent injury, but it was almost like he was willing to go to the floor and he could control it. But it's like he kind of plays like recklessly. It's like a Gerald Wallace type of style of play. And like Gerald Wallace, like overnight became an old man because.
Oh yeah. Remember that? He was an all-star 1 year and then like within 2 years, like out of the league.
Yeah. Because I mean, that style, like it grinds on you. And I mean, in Embiid's case, I mean, you can see the damage that his body has taken. And I mean, it's not like he's 60 years old. I mean, he's like 30, 31, I mean, it's not like he's ancient, but I just don't know where they go from here with that contract if he's not able to play, or if he is and he's drastically diminished when he comes back.
Right. So the guy that Embiid leapfrogged in the last month or so is, of course, you know, it's Bradley Beal. Obviously, he's one of 2 players right now with no. The reason why is the worst contract in the league next to Embiid is it's not because of the money. It's a no trade clause.
Yeah.
He has all the control, and there's only 2 guys in the league who have a no trade clause. It's LeBron James, who obviously has earned that right to have that, even at 40 years old, and then Bradley Beal. What are we doing? And then and the thing is too. Also, he dictates where he wants to go. Look, he's still a good age range. He's only 30, 31 years old. He's 31 now currently. So he's getting $50 million this year. He'll get 53 next year, and then there's a player op in 26-27 for $57 million. He is a productive player. Let's be clear about that. He's still a good player. I think he's averaging 18, 19 a game right now in Phoenix.
Yeah, he had 25 in their last game. So
he is productive.
Yeah, and so above 50% shooting, like he was the one that I was struggling with between him and Embiid. But same reason as you, he can still produce. Like I know that he's going to play. Like even if he averages 17 points in a reduced role, I know he's going to be on the floor. I don't know Embiid's going to be on the floor.
You think Phoenix regretting trading for him?
Oh yeah, totally. Because I mean, like they're probably going to go into like a crash course rebuild this summer, maybe, because that they're trading Durant. We talked about that, and
that's going to that is absolutely going to happen. I'm telling you right now.
Yes,
100%.
But then my question is, what happens with Booker? Does Booker then?
That's a big question.
So they trade Durant, and I mean, it probably behooves the Suns to trade Durant, trade Booker, get 7 or 8 picks back, and then like your cupboard is loaded again and rebuild the way a lot of these other teams have. So I mean, like they're going to be at a crossroads. But the reason why I'm bringing all this up is because it was all precipitated by Bradley Beal's no trade clause. Because like, look, they had dug themselves a deep hole, but the way that they were going to try and dig themselves out of it was moving Bradley Beal before the trade deadline and either getting back, Jimmy Butler was the guy they wanted, not saying they were going to, but like they couldn't even get off the ground basically because he wasn't going to approve any of those deals.
Yeah, I told you like the Heat were interested before he got moved to Phoenix a couple years ago.
Yeah.
They liked him. Pat Riley liked him. I'll take him, but I don't want that no trade clause.
Yeah.
And the same thing too. Also, the reason why Bradley Beal was not ever even moved because we don't want that no trade clause. That's simple. And the numbers, because the money by virtue of where the contracts are going right now, it's not horrendous. It's not horrendous in comparison. Given his, if Bradley Beal can stay healthy, this is actually a decent contract. Is that no trade clause that kills him?
It's not horrendous if you can trade him, and the no trade clause is why it's one of the worst deals.
Exactly. So that's why it's the worst deal. It's the second worst deal, according to us, anyway. All right, who's your third pick for the worst contract in the NBA?
Yeah, so I mean, originally I wasn't going to go with this guy, but then when I looked at all the other contracts, I'm like, I can make an argument that this is worse than all those deals for a number of reasons. So I'm going back to Philly and going with Paul George.
That's easy. We've been saying all year long that Paul George, the Sixers might have 2 or 3 worst contracts in basketball, and you already picked them both.
Yeah, and I mean, he's going to be 35 in May, so that's obviously a problem. They just signed him to a 4-year, $220 million deal. So I mean, he's still got 3 years left on that deal. It's a problem. I think the bigger problem is watching him play. So, I mean, at least in Bradley Beal's case, he looks like he's giving you effort. The concern with Paul George was that not only the exodus from the Clippers because they wouldn't give him his money, but then he goes to the Sixers. I don't even think wanting to go to the Sixers, but it was only a money grab. And then as soon as things took a downturn and Embiid got hurt, wasn't playing well, the team gets banged up. They're an old team. You have Lowry and Gordon and guys like that aren't playing well. He looked like he checked out, like totally. And I know that people will say like, oh, he's got a finger injury. And we've talked about this before. That doesn't affect his defense. I mean, he was getting blown by left and right by guys who are borderline NBA players. And to me, that's a sign of a guy who's quitting. And for the money that they owe him to not get a full effort would be concerning for me that here's a guy who just went for a money grab and he's not concerned with winning at all. So, I mean, it's not that he won't be able to play next year and give them good minutes. It's just that I don't know that he has a desire to if Philly's not going to be a good team. And then how do you then offload that contract? Much like Embiid, you don't, unless you're willing to throw in multiple first-round picks to move it. And then that at that point, that is counterproductive to what you're trying to do in terms of going forward and probably rebuilding. So I think that for me, that was an easy one, especially when I started comparing some of the other guys lower on the list.
I mentioned the age. I think the age has hurts him more than anything else. The age. He's what, 33, 34?
He's 34. He's going to be 35 in May.
With 3 more years to go.
Yeah.
Which means he'll be 38 probably when the player option comes into play.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I warn Sixers fans, like, it's not that I don't like Paul George, but you better hit on this in the first 2 years. And year 1 already exhausted. Because the problem is too also it's not just Paul George, it's Paul George and what everything has to work also too around that is Embiid, and that has not played out well. So, all right, 4th pick in the draft. You know what? Give me Jordan Poole out of Washington. Now you look at the numbers, say, oh, it's not a terrible contract, comparable to other guys, but he's not those other guys. He's not as good as a Jaylen Brown and a Bradley Beal, those guys. Jordan Poole is not a $30 million player. I'm sorry, he's just not. Okay. And I at this point too, also he has 29 coming this year, obviously. 31.8 next year, and then 34 the year after before he's a free agent at 20 years old. The age here is good, but he's not someone when you consider, obviously his inconsistent play and his attitude on top of that too. Also, I don't think teams are like clamoring to add this guy to the roster. I don't even think even in 26, 27, teams that might need a shooter like him or a scorer are clamoring to get this guy, because I don't think he adds a positive culture. As much shit we give Draymond Green for the handling of that situation in Golden State, Draymond may have had a point to some degree about reacting the way he did, because Jordan Poole was seeing he's just kind of aloof when it comes to stuff, and he put him on a bad team, especially now. It's like it shows him worse than a bad team. If he couldn't keep together on a great team and Golden State has won a title, he's not going to do it on a bad team in Washington. So you have all that. Washington's going to be stuck with that guy to the end, honestly. So Jordan Poole for me is my fourth pick.
Yeah, that's a good selection. I mean, if you look at his numbers, they're not terrible. If you look at the contract, it's not terrible. But I mean, when I used to cover the Nets, and I would go into the locker room my first year doing it way back in 2009, I used to talk to Chris Douglas Roberts, and he got all bummed out after all these losses. And I mean, he told me one time, he's like, nobody cares what you do on a losing team. At least I don't. Like, basically, like, no one cares what your stats are on a bad team. And so Jordan Poole can have games where he scores 30 or 35 points, but he's not a good defensive player. He doesn't fit into a winning style of basketball. Like, he can put up great numbers occasionally, but that doesn't make him a good player or a team that or a player that other teams would want or other good teams would want. So I don't see them being able to trade that deal. I would say for Washington, the only benefit for them is that, like, they're in the midst of like a tear down rebuild. So like, it's not like he's preventing them from winning something anyway. If anything, he's probably helping them accomplish their goals long term in terms of they're going to get a top 5 pick this year. They're probably going to be in line to get a top 5 pick next year. And so it's like, you could say, okay, in 4 years, they might be on the upswing, but by that point in time, his contract will be over. So, I mean, like, they'll be, when they're looking to be competitive again, his contract will no longer be an issue. So, I mean, I think, maybe he's helping them accomplish that in terms of them being bad, but I don't see any good team ever biting or giving them any sort of asset for even a second round pick and salary to take that deal on. So I think and they might be fine being stuck with that contract for the next couple of years while they're tanking. So
he's as you said, he's helping their the situation. So yeah. All right. Who's your fifth pick in the draft?
So there are a bunch of players on my list. I have Jeremy Grant at number 4.
I like that one.
Only because, I mean, he signed a 5-year, $160 million deal the same summer that Damian Lillard was, those trade sweepstakes were going on. And we thought that Dame was going to go to Miami. And I mean, you're looking at it and you're like, okay, here's a guy who's past 30, who's making, $30 to $35 million a year, who really hasn't played much this year. And like, is another team going to trade for him to be like their third best player? Like, if you're trading for him to be your third best player, I don't see you competing for a championship. So I don't know, like, prior to the season, like, Detroit made some sense because it's like, okay, you have Cade Cunningham, you have a bunch of young guys. Like, they wound up going with Tobias Harris.
He may fit now. He may fit that team now, given where that team's at currently.
Yeah. But I mean, again, you're putting him in there to be like, your fourth guy, and they're probably not a title contender anyway. But I mean, that's just a tough deal to move given his age and the fact that, like, he really hasn't been available this year. And
how old is he now?
Let me look up to confirm. I want to say he's like 30 or 31.
Wow, a little older than I thought. I think maybe like 20s.
Let me see. He is okay. So he's 31. He was born in 90.
Wow, he's older than I thought.
Yeah.
So that dude's stealing money, brother.
Yeah. So I mean, at 31 years old and having like a banged up year, making that kind of money. And I mean, look, there are other guys not only on my list, but just in the league that are like in that same ballpark where, like, they're past 30, they're under contract for another, 2, 3, 4 years, whatever it is, making that kind of money. Like, it's it's a tough sell. And like guys at that age, like there's not really a big demand to trade for them. So like, I don't know what Portland would get. And like they have a good thing going on in Portland. Like they've definitely gotten a lot better.
They're playing good basketball, man.
Yeah, they're playing great. So I mean, like he doesn't really fit in like what they're doing. Like if I were them, I'd rather just play Tumani Kamara and not have him, like and have him be my wing defender as opposed to like having Jeremy Grant taking like 15 shots a game. And I don't know. I just don't see a future for him on that team or on like a really good team.
Is he a tradable? Is it those numbers? I know he got an extension this past year. Is it remotely tradable?
I mean, only if you're trading him for another bad contract.
So I mean, he's getting like $30 million a year, currently around there.
Yeah. So I mean, he's probably in like the 33, 32. I mean, I don't have the exact.
That's a lot of money for a guy like that. Who's not really a big plus in your team. Wow, that's
but terrible. I mean, 5 years for 160. I mean, that's over $30 million a year. So I mean, that's
Lord.
That's
and the thing is, though, the CBA, you have to pay 9% of the floor.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. This is when people say, "Well, he's on this contract," because teams have to pay. There's not enough good players to pay. So you'll see guys take up cap room, take up roster because they need to pay to get to the floor above the threshold. So
yeah, but the only thing they could get in return for him would be like another player on a similar contract where you're swapping one problem for another.
Yeah. So yeah. All right. So my pick goes here. This is right. Yeah. My pick is number 6, right? Number 6 pick in the draft. Taking future Hall of Famer Kawhi Leonard. He's like Embiid. When he plays, he's the top 5-10 player in the league, without question. But again, when he plays, just signed an extension last year, and we know why he did that. They did that because of the new arena, which I get it, but I don't. So you're paying that guy 3-year extension at $150. He's getting $49 this year, $49.2 this year, $50 million next year at age 34, and at age 35 in his last year of his deal is getting $50 million again. I mean, it's bad because he's really good when he's on the court, but it's so far and few now at this point, and especially when he's healthy during the year and he's not healthy in the playoffs, it's a bad timing. I mean, this is pretty self-explanatory at this point. Like, I get what the Clippers are doing, and I honestly, by the way, I do praise them for having the foresight to letting Paul George walk, because if they had both Paul George and Kawhi on this again, taking a chance on those two guys again to stay healthy, and with that market, at least they have one guy is in on the lineup. Having two guys in on the lineup, that's a big issue. At least have James Harden there to hold the fort down. So Kawhi is my sixth pick for his contract.
Yeah, I mean, I know what they were doing, but as I argued in my book, like going after old and injury-prone players to basically fill out a new arena, which is exactly what the Nets did, is not going to bring you closer to a title. So, I mean, yes, that's going to help you fill some seats, but where the Clippers are right now is like smack dab in the middle, which is like the worst place to be. Like, they've got older players. They're just good enough to not have a good draft pick, but they're, not good enough to be competing for a title. And they don't even have their draft picks. So, I mean, like, they're kind of in a no man's land where it's not like they can say, like, oh, we'll tank. Like, we talk about the Miami Heat all the time. It's like, well, the Heat could pivot into a tank for the rest of the season, whether they're trying to or not. But, like, they'll still have their pick. So they could wind up winning the lottery and getting Cooper Flag, whereas like the Clippers don't.
Can you imagine?
Yeah, but like I'm just saying, like the Clippers don't have that luxury. Maybe Miami jumps up the way Atlanta did. I wouldn't bet on that, and I doubt it would happen. But they at least have that luxury of it possibly happening. Like the Clippers don't have that luxury, so the Clippers are in a state where you have Harden who's old, you have Kawhi who's old and injury prone. You don't have your draft picks. If you were to sell these guys off, you're not getting your draft picks back. So then you're going to be at the mercy of some other team being poor, which isn't likely. And you're doing that all in the name of selling tickets at a new arena. And I get that. But I mean, like, you're just kicking the can down the road for when you're eventually going to have to go into a rebuild.
Well, I think their thing is, make the money back in ticket sales, fresh in the arena. So I get that. I get the business aspect, but from a basketball perspective, terrible. Sure.
Yeah, and when I wrote my book, it was all about, like, from a basketball perspective. It's like, what is gonna make this team a title contender? These are not the things that you wanna do, and ultimately, like, for the Nets, for the Clippers, like, when you're the second tenant in town, basically, I feel like having a sustainable model of success is the best way to do it, and right now, I would argue that the Clippers don't have that because they just have 2 older players, and they're not part of the long-term solution. Like, I don't see this team being capable of winning a title, and I also don't see how they would go out and acquire players that would help them win a title. So they're kind of like stuck with these guys, which is good for ticket sales, but not good for winning a championship.
And by the way, approaching mid-30s also. So the
Oh
age
yeah,
doesn't
totally,
help his case.
and injured all the time. So I mean, like that, he was on my list too. So I mean, that's
Right. All right, 7th pick for you, Greg.
Okay, so I'm deciding between 2 guys here. I mean, I guess I'll be able to include both of them. So I stayed in Portland and went with DeAndre Ayton.
Yeah, he's on my list also too.
Not that he's old. He's only 26. Not that his
He looks
contract.
old.
Well, and that's the issue. I mean, like the issue when I watch him play is that I don't see a guy who looks like he wants to play. I mean, I see a guy who looks like Ben Simmons, quite frankly.
Checked out.
Yeah, he just looks checked out. I mean, he looks like a guy who's there collecting checks. He's poor on the glass. I mean, Channing Frye and a whole bunch of other guys have like killed him this year when you see some of their highlights. And he's been injured a lot in that lineup. And to be honest, just because they say he's injured doesn't mean he actually is. They might just not want him in the lineup. So, I mean, like that could just be like, we'll keep paying you, but we'd rather start Donovan Kling in injury. That's what that could be. And again, his salary and age is not something that's like totally out of control. It's not like he's making $60 million a year. But the issue is, like, you have a guy who's under contract for 2 years who doesn't look like he has any interest in playing basketball. And so I don't know how. So you don't move that contract because who's taking that deal?
Yeah, he was unhappy in Phoenix. He's unhappy in Portland, which means you're just unhappy.
Yeah.
This is who you are. I mean, it is what it is. All right, 8th pick. This might shock you and some and our listeners here, but follow along with me. I picked Jamal Murray for the Nuggets. Still a good player, great player, in fact. However, injury prone, and just started the extension on his deal, if not last year. He's getting $46 million this year, $50 million next year. No, I'm sorry. This year is getting 46. Next year, 46 million. The year after, 50 million. Then in 27-28, 53 million, and then in 2029. At 31 years old, he'll be getting $57 million before he's free agent. And I say this I hate saying it because he's won the finals less than 2 years ago. Him and Jokic are a great tandem, but he's being paid like a player that is a elite top 10 guy, top 15 guy, and yet the production is not as such. And if Jokic for some reason gets hurt, or things happen too, and the team continues to disintegrate in this couple of years, that contract is going to look worse, especially if he starts getting hurt a lot, which he does get hurt a lot for record. He's a good player. He's a really good player. He had a great run the 1 year when he stayed healthy, and him and Jokic won a championship. But the more I watch Denver, and I watch OKC, and we mentioned OKC on the top of the show, the more I watch both those two teams, it's saying both those teams are going in opposite directions right now. Like Denver's still really good, but I'm not sold on them beating OKC in the 7-game series. And Jamal Murray, he kind of looks old out there a little bit. I'm not going to lie to you. When I watch him against the Thunder, he looks old out there.
Yeah, there's a couple things here. I mean, I feel like they were backed into a corner and giving him that deal because Murray runs the 2-man game with Jokic, and if you don't have Murray, it's like, well, then Jokic isn't going to be happy because then he doesn't have like another star level player who's going to complement his game. Murray on his own, like if you took Jokic out of the equation, you're right, it's not a good deal at all. But I feel like they sort of had to do that. And
of course,
the second part of my argument is sort of like a nod to Dallas in terms of like they were willing to move away from Luka because they didn't want to give him that money. Like, can Denver ever be in a situation like where they're like, we'll pay you $175 million, but we're not giving you the max? And is there another place out there that would have given him more money? It kind of like, or forget Dallas, like what the Clippers did with Paul George. Like, we'll give you a deal.
There's always a place, Greg. You know this. There's always a place they'll do that. Trust me.
But I mean, this summer, the only team that's got considerable cap space is Brooklyn. And I don't know that they'd be, lining up to give Jamal Murray like $50 million a year in like a
They bought him 2 years ago after the finals.
Yeah, maybe. But I don't know. I guess in this new like
second apron.
The second apron, the first apron.
That's what's different now.
Second apron. You have Michael Porter Jr. getting max money. You have Jamal Murray getting max money. It's like that's your core. And it's like I don't know that because of that, they have enough room to wiggle around it to then add to that core. So, I mean, because of that, I feel like they're just kind of stuck because of those two deals. I get why they gave it to him, but you're right. It's not a good deal because if you were to just stick him on Washington, let's say, it's not like he would be like an all-star level player. So he's a great player with Jokic, but I don't know that he would be a great player if you put him in another scenario where he had to be like the lead guy.
Right. Yeah, I agree. All right, 9th pick for you, buddy.
Okay, so for my last pick, this one I guess might be a little bit of a surprise, but I went with Jrue Holiday.
Wow, Jrue Holiday,
who probably wouldn't be on the radar for most people. Like I had Zach LaVine on the list, but I'm like, he's still playing well. But like Jrue Holiday's 34 now. He just got signed to an extension. He's going to be making $34 million at age 37, and he's already missed like a fair amount of time this year. And like he's basically like their fifth guy. I mean, he's not. The criticism was when Milwaukee traded him for Dame. It's like, oh, how could you take away this great defensive player and so on and so forth? And it's like the reason why they did that is because like he's not a guy who's going to go out and get you 20 points a game. Like he's basically a defensive specialist at this point. And for me, at that age and being a defensive specialist, like it works fine with the Celtics because there's a pecking order there, and he's perfectly content and he fits in well in that pecking order, being at the bottom. But I'm looking at a guy who, like, if he were still in Milwaukee, he'd be averaging like 14, 15 points a game, playing great defense. But
and not only that, on a team that's getting older and older and older. Now, granted, they moved Middleton for Kuzma, that helps a little bit, but at the same time, I don't think Milwaukee is going to challenge Boston or even Cleveland this year at this point in the playoffs. And Jrue Holiday, I don't think is going to change that dynamic because of the age and the injuries.
Yeah. Like had he been there, that would not I think that Milwaukee is a better team or would be a better team with Dame there right now than if they had Holiday, because they just wouldn't have enough scoring on the floor. They wouldn't have enough scoring to complement.
To trade one for the other, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, like the contract isn't bad in the sense that like by itself it's bad. But like on the Celtics is fine because he's not being asked to do all that much because Tatum and Brown are doing the heavy lifting. Derek White will do a lot of heavy lifting. I mean, heck, Peyton Pritchard will do like more heavy lifting than Jrue Holiday will be asked to do. So, I mean, like he's not asked to score. So he fits in well in that dynamic. But he's not really a great shooter. No. He's 34 years old. He's signed until 37. Like, I don't know. Anytime you get a player who's in his mid-30s making, mid-30s, $30 million money, like that's a tough deal.
I think Boston, what they did also, and you see, if you look at the contracts of Tatum, contracts of Brown, contracts of White, they all signed within a year of each other. And Jrue Holiday, too, especially his extension. They made a calculation. Okay, this is going to be our core for the next 3 to 4 years. Mm-hmm. We're locking in this core. This is it. So wherever how many titles to get out of this, we'll see how they got one already, possibly another one on the horizon. Who knows? Because he'll be in 27-28. He'll be 37 years old. With a player option. We have to assume at 37-2, he's opting in that contract.
Yeah,
we have to assume he's gonna do that. Okay, because he's not gonna be a $37 million player. Hell, he's not a $30 million player now. Probably we probably agree to that. But the Celtics made a calculation. We're gonna lock in this core. They won a title. We're locking this core, and how far his core goes. I mean, do they trade Jrue Holiday at some point down the road? I don't know if a $34 million guy is going to be enticing for teams, with multiple years on his contract. Probably not. This is it for him pretty much, unless he retires. So yeah, I actually agree with that. Actually, I didn't have my list, but looking at this thing now, as you mentioned it, I actually agree with you on this.
Yeah, and it's similar to the Jamal Murray thing. It's like in that system, he works fine, so it's not terrible. But if you just isolate the player and the contract, it doesn't look great. And in terms of moving him, like the only way you're moving him is in the same way that Milwaukee moves Chris Middleton, and then you're having to use assets future picks, possible young players to get off that deal to then get someone else for him in the middle of that deal. So it's not like it's immovable. It's just that like you're going to have to give up valuable assets at some point. Maybe that's a 2031 first round pick or something like that, down the line to get off of his deal. So, I mean, it's not like it's a deal that other teams would want unless they're getting compensated for it.
Right. The only difference between him and Murray is that he's a little bit older. So,
yeah.
I mean, yeah, to your point. All right. Last pick for me. I actually was going to go, I had one guy in mind I was going to go take, but I started doing a little more research as we're talking. I was going to take Terry Rozier, actually, in Miami, but he has 1 year in his deal next year. And I still think that $27 million can be tradable-ish because of, final year's contracts. Like, if you can move Kyle Lowry at $3 million, like last year, you can move Terry Rozier next year. So Miami, that's why I pivoted off the Rozier thing. But he's been terrible for the Heat this year. So I decided to go. Another guy I considered doing also too. Am I surprise you? Damian Lillard. I consider that one also too. But he's having a great year.
Yeah.
And what he does well, you see with Steph Curry, ages well. So I'm not going to hold that against him. Although I think the fit may be an issue moving forward the older he gets now. If Milwaukee doesn't add ancillary pieces around him and Giannis the next 2 or 3 years, that may hurt in the end. But his production hasn't changed. He's still another player. I have to go with the, I guess, sort of obvious one. I'm going to go Anthony Davis. Because, again, he changed the narrative until this latest injury in Dallas. And now you have the situation now with Kyrie out. How long? We'll see. AD now in Dallas. He's now he's 31 currently right now. So next he has 2 more years, $54 million at next year, and then $58 million the year after. Okay, then a player option at age 34 at $62 million. Now, assuming Kyrie's back and whatnot, and things are okay, he does fit the timeline for the Mavericks. But the question is going to be, is he going to be available to play in a lot of those games? So I don't think it's a terrible contract because when he's like Embiid. When he's healthy, he's absolutely a top 10 player in the league. But what are we getting? I mean, we don't know. And those numbers, if we see AD revert back to what he was before these last 2 years in LA, back to being hurt all the time, that's going to be a massive problem for the Mavericks. And that number makes it even worse. And we're still 3 years out. And I'll tell you right now, if that's a common thing for him going forward, he may opt in that contract on this player option.
Yeah, my concern would be the Kyrie injury. I mean, I would say the contract looks worse 2 weeks after Kyrie tears his ACL versus the day before he tears his ACL. Because, like, again, they were on a timeline of, okay, the next 3 years we're going to compete for a title. And now you might not have Kyrie for 3/4 of the year next year. If you might be looking at All-Star break. And let's face it, like, I don't know that Kyrie is going to be one who's going to like rush his rehab. It's not like he's going to like push himself to come back 2 months earlier. He's probably a guy who's going to err on the side of caution with it. So I would say the trade deadline, All-Star break is probably like a best case scenario. So now you have Anthony Davis and who else for the foreseeable future, assuming he can even stay healthy. So yeah. I mean, like, they are, yeah, I don't disagree with that pick at all, because given his age, given the money, given the lack of a system around him, the only thing I would say about that, and this is probably another podcast unto itself, is that, like, given how good he is, there probably would be takers for him. I don't know that you'd get back as much as you'd like, given that they didn't get it.
For AD, you mean?
Yeah.
Does Dallas really have the gumption to blow it up after what they just did with Luka? That'd be a bad, I mean, brother, that'd be a bad look. No, you get rid of Luka for nothing, pretty much. Well, not say nothing, but you get rid of Luka for way less than you would have gotten on the market, right? Then you just give up on the AD thing. Oh boy, they will be a riot in Dallas.
I'm not saying that they will do that. I'm just saying that, like, there's a world in which he's still desirable, whereas like a Drew Holiday would be more like comparable to Chris Middleton. You know what I mean? Like, I think that you could talk a contender into taking him. Like, would Phoenix swap Durant for him? You know, and you'd probably be talking multiple teams, but like, if a desperate team like Phoenix looked at it and said, like, this is our way of trying to salvage not having to trade Booker, like, could you get desperate teams who are in contention or perceivable contention on their part to make that move? That's the only reason I'm saying that, like, it's still, I would say, a movable contract.
I can see Miami taking a flyer on him, maybe, but then again, then he has to play center again, and I don't think he wants to do that. So.
Yeah, no. I mean, I'm not saying that they will. I would be shocked if they did because how it would look would be horrific. But I'm just saying that, like, again, if you're isolating the player, his number, his skill set, would there be a market for him? I would say yes. But when you're factoring in all those other things, that's why it's a bad contract, because you know that Kyrie's going to be out a long time. He's probably going to miss time himself. You're on the hook for more than $50 million. So, like, I agree with you on all those things. I'm just saying that, like, there's a world in which you could probably move him.
Yeah, if you're Dallas, you got to make this work. you got to lock him in, because it's a bad look to get rid of Luka, and then within a year, it's like, I'm going to trade AD now. You literally traded Luka for this guy. You give him the guy now. Now, unless you can get those picks, as much picks you can for Davis, which at this point, I don't think you can get more than a first rounder for him.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably looking at a max of 2, and I don't know that. And again, every pick is different. So, I mean, like, again, a Knicks first rounder next year is not the same as, like, having the Phoenix first rounder next year.
Right, exactly.
I mean, like, Phoenix is going to wind up in the lottery most likely. I mean, barring something unforeseen, like, the worst that Phoenix will wind up with is like the 11th or 12th pick, whereas the Knicks will be picking like 22 or 23 at worst. So, I mean, not all first round picks are created equal.
Right.
So, I mean, like, yeah, if you're just talking about one good pick, they could probably get one good pick. They could probably get like a poo-poo platter of picks from teams that have protected picks, like lottery protected picks and all that sort of stuff. So,
right.
Yeah, I mean, they're not all created equal, but yeah, I wouldn't see it. There's a huge market for him in terms of picks, given his age and injury history. So, yeah, I mean, they were banking with that deal that Kyrie Irving and him were going to play great together. And for a half, they did. But I mean, they're two injury-prone players. And I know that in Kyrie's case, it's a freak injury.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, they bet on him when they made that deal, and they lost that bet.
Right. Anyway, follow Greg on Twitter at GHRINYA. That was like, did I get it right?
Yeah, and then NBA after that.
NBA, of course, yeah. So I was going to right, of course, on that one. Greg, thank you as always coming to pod. Are you ever going to write another book? Ever?
I'd probably have to have some sort of access to write another book. So.
What do you mean? I mean,
yeah, like I was covering the Nets, so I got to go in the locker room and talk to the players and be at the games and sit with the press and all that. So I mean, like, I had access for that. Right now, I don't have any access other than me watching the games, reading up on it, listening to the experts, and then doing podcasts. So I mean, like, because I was in that world, I felt like I was connected to it. Right now, I don't have that connection. But I guess never say never. But I wouldn't say it's on the immediate horizon.
Right. Of course, follow me on Twitter at EJ Christian 7, Earnestly Podcast, across all podcast catchers. Of course, follow the podcast as well, too. It's its own YouTube page now at youtube.com/@EarnSpeakPod. Of course, as well as on TikTok at EarnSpeakPod. We have our own TikTok now there as well, with clips of the show and whatnot. Other than that, talk to you guys later. And until next podcast.